Okay, before we jump into Maya right away, we need to understand like few little things before you do your character creation. Okay. Now, we go through the CA already. Then we're gonna move on to the pipeline explanation, and followed by planning, then observation of the human body shape, and setting up image plane. Okay. Now, when it comes to modeling, right, there are different type of modeling. There is this traditional modeling, okay, and there is this modern modeling. Now, for this module, the MD1211 CMS, we're gonna cover more on the traditional method, okay, which means you're gonna be spending most of your time in Maya, okay, where in the modern modeling method, you are going to be spending using ZBrush, which will be covered in the different module. Okay, so these are the difference between the modeling method. Okay, in the traditional modeling, you are going to be using box modeling or even patching and a different technique. Now, when it comes to the box modeling, okay, so this is what the progress look like. So you start with the box, okay, and you start adding the line, okay, and eventually you build up the shape. Okay, in this case is a human head, right? So you start with a very simple shape, you're adding a line, and then you move all the vertex around, follow the reference picture, and you end up like that. Okay, I don't particularly like this kind of method. I usually use the patching method, okay, which is the second method. Okay, for me it's easier to use this method. You start with the plane, then just one simple plane, and from there you kind of extrude one by one. Okay, so you have more freedom to create the edge flow, and it's easier for me to maintain topology. Okay, and my suggestion when it comes to the modeling is that you're gonna have to follow my method. If you are prefer to use box modeling, is also okay. If you are using patch modeling, is also okay, as long as you have the correct topology, because topology is the most important things apart from the look of your model. Okay, so moving on. This is a modern modeling method. So rather than creating the simple shape, what people usually do in this modern method is that they create the character in a very detailed fashion right away. Okay, so once you create all these nice wrinkle, the skin fold, and everything, and then they create a low res version of that. Okay, whereas in the traditional, we actually create from the low res version, then we can move on to the high res. So it's kind of like the inverse of one method or the other. Okay, so we don't use the modern method for now. We are using the traditional. So this is the kind of topology or the density that we're going to be looking into. Okay. Now, my plan when I do my character creation is that we are going to use a modular system, meaning that we are going to model the body part separately. Okay, so I'm going to model the hand in one file, and I'm going to model the body in a different file, and the foot, and then you can attach them together. I think it's much an easier approach. Okay, now I think you still remember topology. So topology is the way the model is laid out, and yeah, the how the vertex is also like placed to create the mesh surface. Okay, so I'm gonna show you these probably at the end of the video between a good topology and a bad topology. Now, this is an example of a good topology and a bad topology. Now, the one on the left is a bad topology. I mean, you can see like there is no edge flow, whereas this one is a good topology. So if you have a bad topology, when it comes to animation, you're gonna have a bad deformation. You see here, these two vertex is being pulled quite extreme. Okay, whereas this one, everything is like divided nicely. So this is the kind of topology that we try to go after. Okay, everything is nice and defined. Okay, whereas this one, everything is, yeah, we just like bunch of yeah, faces like that. Okay, whereas this one kind of follow like the line flow of the human like muscle. Okay, and when it comes to deformation or animation, like this topology will deform better. Okay, so this is an example, right? Why your object or your character need to have good topology, because at the end of the day, your character need to be rich and animated. So if you have a bad topology, so for example, if you do this like area wrongly, then when his character moves his arm, then you're gonna have again a bad deformation around its area, and you may not end up like cannot be animated, right? So you have to be wary about the topology. Okay, so this is another example of good topology and a bad topology. I mean, it's pretty obvious, like this line does not resemble of a human face muscle, right? It's also a bad topology. Everything which is like in a grid is also a bad one. And if you compare these to the good topology, right, this kind of resemble, right, this line here, right, and there's a loop around the eye, right, and there's a loop around the mouth, right, and also this one here, it's a defined loop here, right, there's a defined loop that goes around, and also the lip. So all the line kind of like resemble the major muscle in your face. Okay. Now, to identify the topology on the faces, it's pretty simple. So we usually have like three major loop. So if you look at this picture, so you have one right here, right, and one around the eye, and around this cheek area and the mouth. Okay, so if you compare this with that one, they also have very similar loop, they call, right? So you have one here, and two, three, four with the mouth, right? And also this cartoon character, so very similar style of the topology. Okay, and moving on to reference picture. When you want to load the reference picture, right, make sure your reference picture is orthographic. So what it means that is like this one, right? It's perfectly from the front and perfectly from the side. So it's easier for you to trace the shape. Whereas this one is a bad reference picture, because you're gonna have a hard time tracing these characters' faces because they are on an angle. Okay, so you should aim for this one, definitely. Okay, I usually like to open the reference picture on Photoshop before I put it in Maya right away. So I make sure like all the uh, body part is kind of aligned, because if you have like this one on the top, right, the nose is not aligned, the lip is not aligned, and the chin, you're gonna have a trouble when you're trying to model the front and the side view, because again you're gonna be dealing with a 3D space where you have to look at the model from the front and the side. Now having a difference between the front and the side picture, you're gonna end up with a lot of trouble. So I try my best to kind of like arrange this nicely. And in some cases, you might need to repaint or redraw your reference picture, okay? Because it will help you again in the future. This is just an example of your what the character look like. So you have like a very comical kind of shape. You have the face, and from the front, from the side. So this is really good like orthographics, and you just need to trace everything's in line, and this one is ready to go. Okay, I usually uh, may have another version if I have to model this character, maybe like a more detailed version of his face from the front and the side view. Now, so how do I model my character, right? For a start, maybe you guys should use a T-pose, right? So in this case, this is what we call T-pose character, and the one on the right is the A-pose. Now, the difference between T-pose and A-pose is that a T-pose is much easier for you to model, right? Because everything like his left and his right arm is perfectly straight. Okay, whereas an A-pose character is much harder to model because the arms is kind of on the angle, right? And it can be quite hard for beginners to model. But when it comes to the more experienced character modeler, they tend to use the A-pose because it's much better when it comes to distortion. Because most of the time, your character are going to be in this relaxed, they call it relaxed pose and A pose as compared to your T pose. So that way, like it will deal with distortion much better around this armpit area. Okay, so this is an example of the T pose and an A pose. So if you do a T pose, if you can see here, it has a very sharp like deformation, and this one has a very kind of not very, it's kind of like more smoother deformation. That's why like people prefer to do A pose. Okay, but for this first CA, I recommend everybody to do a T pose version because it's the first time you guys are modeling the character. Okay, this is just an activity. You can get your human references from the blackboard, but if you have your own character creation is also fine. Okay, and one thing very important is that you guys need to set the measurement inside Maya to meters because we are going to model the character in the correct proportion. So usually a character about 1.6 to 1.8 in height. Okay, so having the measurement set to meters is much easier for you to visualize. And this is a loop that happening in the torso. So when it comes to the character creation, I like to start modeling the torso because I find that it's the easiest one to model. Okay, and when it comes to the modeling, I usually to have like this one major loop, the blue one, and one red one that goes around to the back, and one more, the ones around the armpit area. Okay, so this is the three major loop that you should have in your model. Okay, so this is just a process on how I start with my torso modeling. And again, you can also watch the video. So in the video, I'll show you step by step on how I model the torso. So this is just a screen cap that I did. Right, nothing special. So I'm using a patch modeling. So I'm starting with the box, and I cut the box in half, right? Because there's no reason for you to model left and right separately, okay, unless your character is asymmetrical. Then you need to model the character separately. But in this case, we're going for symmetrical. Okay, it depends on the design that you choose. Okay, and again, I extrude the edges from the front, it goes all the way to the back to create kind of like a crotch area. Alright, then like this. So I'm defining the edge much better using the patch method. Right. And again, you can refer to my video about the torso modeling. Okay, and you can find references for your character modeling by just googling these article.